Imagine waking up every day unsure whether life will hand you success or failure, and believing that your happiness depends entirely on that roll of the dice. One promotion, one breakup, one accident, one miracle, you're up, you're down, and you never really feel in control. We've been trained to chase luck, to wait for good fortune, blame bad breaks, and measure our worth by outcomes we can't control. But what if I told you there's another way to live, one that doesn't rely on luck at all? The Stoics figured it out thousands of years ago. Real peace, real strength comes from focusing only on what you can control and letting the rest go. When you stop gambling with your emotions and start embracing reality as it is, life doesn't get easier, but you get stronger. If you've ever felt stuck, anxious about the future, or frustrated by how unpredictable life can be, this video is for you. We're diving into why Stoics reject luck, how they stay grounded in truth, and how that mindset can change everything. Imagine waking up every day unsure whether life will hand you success or failure, and believing that your happiness depends entirely on that roll of the dice. One promotion, one breakup, one accident, one miracle, you're up, you're down, and you never really feel in control. We've been trained to chase luck, to wait for good fortune, blame bad breaks, and measure our worth by outcomes we can't control. But what if I told you there's another way to live, one that doesn't rely on luck at all? The Stoics figured it out thousands of years ago. Real peace, real strength, comes from focusing only on what you can control and letting the rest go. When you stop gambling with your emotions and start embracing reality as it is, life doesn't get easier, but you get stronger. If you've ever felt stuck, anxious about the future, or frustrated by how unpredictable life can be, this video is for you. We're diving into why Stoics reject luck, how they stay grounded in truth, and how that mindset can change everything. So if you're ready to stop waiting on luck and start owning your reality, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss a single step on this journey. Let's get into it. What if I told you that most of the stress you carry about your career, relationships, even your future is coming from trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place? We spend so much of our lives obsessing over outcomes. We hope we get the job, we fear losing the relationship, we want the world to go our way. And when it doesn't, we say we were unlucky. But here's the truth the Stoics knew thousands of years ago. Luck is just a name we give to things we don't understand or can't control. And when we live at the mercy of luck, we're giving up the one thing we do have power over: our response. The Stoics had a radical idea for their time and still for ours: stop trying to control the uncontrollable. They divided life into two categories. First, the things that are within our control: our thoughts, our choices, our character. And second, everything else: the weather, the economy, what other people do, whether we win or lose, whether fortune smiles on us or turns away. When we confuse the two, when we act like the second category should obey our will, we suffer. Not just emotionally, but existentially. Because we start to base our identity and self-worth on results, on recognition, on winning some invisible game of chance. But Stoicism flips that script completely. It says, forget the results, forget the luck. Focus entirely on how you show up, on your decisions, on your values. That's it. You see, when we believe in luck, we unconsciously give away our agency. I didn't get the promotion, bad luck. That relationship didn't work out, wrong timing. They got the opportunity, I didn't eat, just fate, I guess. But all that thinking does is disempower us. It keeps us passive, waiting for fortune to deliver or destroy, instead of standing firm in our own choices. And it's not about being indifferent or emotionless. It's about freedom. Imagine the clarity that comes from not chasing things you can't hold onto anyway. Imagine making decisions not to impress others or avoid failure, but because they align with your principles. The Stoics weren't unrealistic. They knew bad things happen, that life is unpredictable. But their strength came from not needing things to go their way in order to feel at peace. Epictetus said it best: happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle: some things are within our control, and some things are not. That one idea is the foundation of a Stoic life, and it's powerful because it shifts our focus inward, not in a selfish way, but in a disciplined, grounded way. We stop wasting energy trying to bend reality, and instead learn how to stand tall within it. You can start practicing this today. The next time something doesn't go your way, catch your instinct to say that was just bad luck, and instead ask, what part of this was in my control? How did I respond? Did I act with integrity, with patience, with courage? Because those are the measures of real success. Not whether you got what you wanted, but whether you lived in a way you can be proud of regardless of the outcome. The beauty of this mindset is that it doesn't depend on winning. It doesn't depend on being lucky. It only depends on you, on how you think, how you act, how you choose to face reality as it is. And once you lock into that, you stop fearing failure, you stop chasing luck, and you start becoming unshakable. So before we move on, remember this: the moment you stop fighting for control over things that aren't yours is the moment you gain total control over the one thing that matters most: yourself. We've all done it: wished things were different, wished someone treated us better, wished we had more time, more money, more recognition. But here's the problem: the more we wish for a version of reality that doesn't exist, the more disconnected we become from the one that does. And that disconnection, that's where suffering begins. Stoicism isn't just about grit or emotional toughness. At its core, it's about radical alignment with reality. Not the filtered, idealized version we build in our minds, but the raw, unedited truth of what is. The Stoics believed that peace of mind doesn't come from changing your circumstances, it comes from seeing them clearly and responding to them wisely. Because you can't fight the ocean, but you can learn how to sail. Let's be honest, facing reality isn't always comfortable. It forces us to look at where we've been avoiding the truth. Maybe it's the job we know isn't right for us, but we stay out of fear. Maybe it's the person we keep making excuses for, hoping they'll change. Or maybe it's looking in the mirror and realizing we've been blaming bad luck for what's really just a lack of ownership. The Stoics didn't believe in denying emotions, but they warned against being ruled by them, especially when those emotions are triggered by fantasies about how things should be. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote to himself, "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace." That's not passive resignation. It's ultimate strength, because it means accepting the world on its terms, not ours. When we embrace reality, we stop wasting energy resisting it, and that resistance is exhausting. Think about it: how much of your mental bandwidth goes toward replaying the past or worrying about a future that hasn't happened yet? Stoicism teaches us to pull all of that focus back into the present, where action is possible, where life is actually happening. You can't steer your ship from a fantasy, you can only do it from where you are. This isn't about giving up on goals or settling for less. It's about grounding yourself in truth so your goals aren't just wishful thinking, they're intentional, they're aligned. You want to grow? Start by seeing things clearly, not how you feel about them, not how you wish they were, just what they are. From there, every step you take is real. And that kind of progress is way more powerful than chasing some imagined lucky break. There's something deeply empowering about saying, "This is my situation. I may not like it, but I won't pretend it's something else." That mindset gives you clarity, and clarity gives you choice. You may not control everything that happens to you, but you can always choose how to meet it with courage, with honesty, with discipline. And the more you live this way, the more you realize how freeing it is. You don't need the world to change for you to feel okay. You don't need every outcome to go your way to feel at peace. All you need is a clear view of reality and the strength to move through it with intention. So the next time you find yourself drifting into should-have-beens of poor what-ifs, pause. Ground yourself. Ask what's real right now. And what can I do with it? That's where your power lives, not in luck, not in fantasy, but right here, in the clarity of the present. Because when you stop resisting reality and start working with it, life stops feeling like a storm you're trying to survive and starts feeling like a current you know how to navigate. Have you ever noticed how quickly we credit success to talent or luck, and how fast we blame failure on bad fortune? They were just in the right place at the right time. I guess it just wasn't meant to be. We say these things without thinking, as if life is some cosmic lottery where only the fortunate few win. But the Stoics would challenge that idea completely. They believed that luck isn't a force, it's a label we slap onto events we don't fully understand. And that label? It's lazy. It tricks us into thinking that the world is ruled by randomness and that we're just along for the ride. But that mindset makes us passive. It disconnects us from reality. And worst of all, it strips us of the responsibility to act with purpose. The Stoics approached life differently. They believed that while the world is unpredictable, it isn't mysterious. Things don't happen out of nowhere. Every result, every so-called stroke of luck, is the outcome of cause and effect of patterns, choices, timing, and conditions, many of which we'll never fully see. But just because we don't see the whole picture doesn't mean it's random. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, said it plainly: luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. That idea alone flips our entire relationship with fortune. Suddenly, luck isn't about stars aligning or fate smiling on you. It's about being ready when the moment comes. It's about doing the work even when no one's watching, so that when the door opens, you're not scrambling, you're stepping through with confidence. But let's go deeper. Why do we want to believe in luck so badly? Because it gives us an excuse. It protects our ego. If someone else succeeds, it's easier to say they were lucky than to admit they might be more prepared, more consistent, more focused. And if we fail, it's easier to say luck was against us than to reflect on what we could have done differently. The Stoics rejected that kind of thinking not because it's false, but because it's useless. It doesn't help you grow. It doesn't make you better. And it definitely doesn't give you peace. They believe the more you rely on luck to explain life, the less responsibility you take for how you live it. That's why Stoicism teaches us to dig deeper, to look at our choices, to own our behavior. Not because we can control everything, but because that's where growth lies. Here's the catch: rejecting luck doesn't mean denying uncertainty. The Stoics weren't naive. They knew life could be cruel and chaotic. They just believed in facing that chaos head-on instead of blaming it or hiding from it. When we understand that we're not owed anything by the universe, we start focusing on what we can do, how we train our minds, how we show up each day, how we prepare for the moment when things do go our way. This is where Stoicism gives you real power. When you stop outsourcing your life to luck, you stop waiting, you start living. You stop hoping for easy wins, and you start building the kind of strength that can handle any outcome, good or bad. You shift your focus from the noise outside to the discipline within. That's where confidence is born. That's where peace comes from, not from believing everything will go your way, but from knowing you'll be okay even if it doesn't. So next time you hear yourself thinking, "They just got lucky," pause. Ask instead, what did they do that I'm not seeing? And more importantly, what am I doing with what I've been given? That shift from blaming chance to embracing choice is the essence of a Stoic mindset. Because once you stop believing in luck and start believing in effort, clarity, and preparation, you stop gambling with your life and start owning it. What if everything you've been taught to chase, status, wealth, applause, was never really yours to begin with? What if the things you cling to the most are also the ones that can disappear overnight? That's not just a hypothetical. That's reality. And the Stoics knew it all too well. They watched fortunes rise and fall. empires crumble, friends betray, bodies weaken. And yet, instead of despairing, they chose to anchor themselves in something that couldn't be taken away, their character. Because while fortune is fickle, character is constant. In today's world, we're conditioned to chase external validation. We measure success by promotions, followers, likes, attention, awards, things that sit completely outside our control. We treat them like proof of our worth. But the moment any of it disappears, we start to doubt ourselves. We say we're unlucky, that we must have done something wrong, or worse, that life is unfair. But the Stoic response to all of that is simple and sharp. You are never in control of the outcome, only of the process. Who you are when no one's watching. The choices you make when you have nothing to gain. How you treat others when you're not trying to impress, that's the stuff of character. And character, unlike luck, doesn't vanish in a crisis. In fact, it reveals itself in one. Take Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who faced war, betrayal, and plague. He could have blamed his circumstances. He could have leaned into power or privilege. But instead, he wrote quietly in his journal, "The only thing that isn't worthless, to live this life out truthfully and rightly, and be patient with those who don't." No mention of luck, no cry for pity. Just a man choosing character over chaos. The danger in depending on fortune is that it turns life into a performance. We start doing things not because they're right, but because they're rewarded. We compromise our values to fit in. We abandon our standards to get ahead. And the more we win by doing that, the more empty we feel, because deep down we know it wasn't us who succeeded. It was a version of us built for the crowd. Stoicism invites you to walk a different path. One where you trade the quick hit of applause for the long game of integrity. One where you stop trying to be seen as successful and instead become someone worthy of your own respect. Because when character becomes your compass, the ups and downs of life stop shaking you. When you lose, you stay steady. When you win, you stay humble. And through it all, you stay you. Here's the thing, character isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. Are your actions aligned with your principles? Are you being honest when it's hard? Are you staying kind when you feel wronged? Are you holding to your values even when no one's around to praise you for it? That's real strength, and unlike luck, it doesn't run out. Even in the darkest moments, you can return to your values. When you can't control the world, you can still control how you respond. And that tiny space between what happens to you and how you choose to act, that's where your power lies. So let the world chase fortune. Let others gamble with luck. You build character. That's what lasts. That's what endures. And when everything else falls away, that's what will still be standing. Because in a world full of shifting tides and unpredictable turns, your only true anchor is the kind of person you decide to be. Ever felt like life just keeps throwing punches and you barely have time to catch your breath before the next one hits? That feeling of constantly being on edge, waiting for the next thing to go wrong, it's exhausting. But the Stoics believed that we don't become strong by escaping hardship, we become strong by embracing reality, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because only when we stop fighting what is, do we find the clarity to respond with strength. We're taught to avoid pain, to push discomfort away, to hope that luck will bail us out when things get tough. But Stoicism flips that completely. It says lean into it. Not in a reckless or masochistic way, but in a clear, grounded way. Embracing reality means facing difficulty head-on and using it to build inner strength, instead of wasting our energy wishing things were easier. Think about it, when have you grown the most in your life? Was it during the easy times when everything was going your way? Or was it when things were messy, uncertain, and hard? The Stoics knew that reality is a better teacher than comfort ever could be. They didn't pray for good luck, they trained for resilience. They expected life to challenge them and used those challenges as a forge for character. One of the key teachings in Stoicism is the idea of amor fati, love of fate. It means not just accepting reality, but loving it for what it is, even the painful parts, especially the painful parts, because everything that happens to you is an opportunity to practice virtue, to develop patience, courage, humility, and wisdom. When you stop resisting the way things are, you start using every situation to grow. Let's be clear, embracing reality isn't about giving up or being passive. It's not about saying, "Oh well," and doing nothing. It's about seeing clearly so you can act wisely. When you look at a situation without illusion, without denial, you get to ask the most important question: what's the best move I can make right now? That question puts you back in the driver's seat, not over the outcome, but over yourself. Hardship becomes a kind of training ground. Every setback becomes a test of your mindset. Are you still going to act with integrity, even when it's hard? Will you still keep going, even when it's not fair? That's how Stoics became unshakable, not by avoiding pain, but by turning it into purpose. Epictetus, who was born a slave and lived much of his life in physical pain, said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." It's easy to be kind when life is easy. It's easy to be calm when nothing's going wrong. But true strength shows up when everything is falling apart and you don't. This way of living takes practice. It's not instant. But every time you face a tough situation and don't fall apart, every time you pause instead of panic, every time you respond with wisdom instead of rage, you're building something inside yourself that luck can never give and fortune can never take away. And over time, life starts to feel different. Not because it gets easier, but because you get stronger. The world doesn't shake you like it used to. You stop reacting out of fear and start acting out of clarity. You stop wishing for things to change and start changing your relationship with what is. That's the Stoic way. Embrace the reality in front of you, however messy, and let it shape you, not into someone hardened or bitter, but into someone resilient, grounded, and fully awake to life. Have you ever sat with that feeling of unfairness when someone else seems to win effortlessly while you're putting in the work and getting nowhere? It's tempting to think the world just isn't on your side. That maybe luck favors others and skips over you. But here's the hard truth the Stoics embraced. Life doesn't owe you fairness. And the sooner you stop expecting it to, the freer you become. We live in a world that constantly talks about what's fair and what we deserve. And when things don't match those expectations, we feel betrayed by people, by the system, even by life itself. But the Stoics never measured peace by how fair things were. They measured it by how clearly they could see the world and how calmly they could move through it. Because reality doesn't run on fairness. It runs on cause and effect, on chaos and order, on human flaws and nature's indifference. And luck? That's just a name we give to what we don't fully understand. So when we wait for things to even out or expect the universe to balance the scales, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. The Stoics didn't waste time on that. They asked a different question. How will I respond when life isn't fair? That's where the real shift happens. Instead of being consumed by what should have happened, Stoicism brings you back to what can happen next, what you can do, regardless of how others are treated, how fortune turns, or how uneven the path may seem. This mindset is what separates the reactive from the resilient. Marcus Aurelius dealt with betrayal, war, illness, and constant pressure, and yet in his meditations, you won't find him complaining about life being unfair. Instead, he reminded himself that it's not what happens that defines us, but what we do with it. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he wrote. Realize this, and you will find strength. This doesn't mean you ignore injustice or pretend things are okay when they aren't. Stoicism isn't about denial, it's about discipline. It's about refusing to let bitterness rule your actions. Because once you accept that fairness isn't guaranteed, you stop waiting for it, and you start building something sturdier, a mindset that holds strong, no matter what. When you expect fairness, you become fragile. You base your peace on outcomes you don't control. But when you expect reality, you become grounded. You don't need everything to be fair in order to stay focused, kind, or courageous. You act from principle, not payoff. There's something powerful about showing up every day, doing the work, making the right choices, not because it guarantees a reward, but because it reflects who you've chosen to be. The Stoics taught that virtue is the reward, not success, not recognition, not applause, just the deep, quiet strength of knowing you lived with integrity, regardless of how the world responded. That mindset doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you unshakable. Because when life throws you curveballs, and it will, you're not surprised, you're prepared. When someone else gets lucky, you don't crumble. You keep moving. You keep building. You keep showing up. The moment you stop expecting life to be fair is the moment you stop being a victim of it. You become a student of it. You learn. You adapt. You rise. And that's what Stoicism offers, not an escape from the messiness of life, but a way to meet it fully, with clear eyes and steady hands. So let go of fairness, embrace reality, and build the kind of mindset that doesn't need luck to move forward, one that stays grounded, no matter what life throws your way.